my fellow readers. There's a lag on the timing. Hello, my fellow readers. It's I, Dark Symphony 777, with another fan fiction reading. As always, a link to the story will be in the description below. Please like the video, subscribe to the channel, click on that bell for notifications, leave a comment in the comment section below, and your thoughts to the story, any future fan fictions you want me to read or review. So, the story I am doing a reading of is Can't Bring Myself to Pull the Trigger. It's not because I care. It is a Sonic the Hedgehog fanfiction by Death Rainbows. And this story, I actually specifically looked it up because Real Talk, me and Lady Armister were talking, and we just started randomly talking about Sonic, and she said, I wonder if there's any fan fictions that have Eggman not, like, capturing Sonic, but not going through with it, and I'm actually, like, looking through the Sonic page, just trying to find some story that has that premise. And I found this. I sent it to her. She said she really she said it was really good. So I thought, hell, I'll do a reading of it. So, let's get started. You can't catch lightning in a bottle. Just you cannot hold the wind within your hand. Dr. Eggman has spent countless hours, months, years, theorizing on just how that plastic hedgehog could always escape his ingenious traps and foil his schemes. Yet even he had to admit that this was the best explanation he could come up with. It simply didn't make sense. It did. The hedgehog was the living embodiment of chaos, while the doctor was the embodiment of order, machines, and code. One simply could not exist without the other. And so no matter the odds, Sonic just couldn't stay down and let order take over. What a boring world that would be. Sonic the Hedgehog was 10 when the doctor had first laid eyes on him. An unassuming little ball of fur, speedy and lithe. Yet somehow, more than enough to destroy the robots he had spent hours building in a mere few seconds. I'm pretty sure, it's explained in the official story that when Sonic first went after Eggman, Eggman's machines weren't built for combat. They weren't built to stop Sonic. So, hence why, Sonic 1, they're very useless. And it's only halfway to through Sonic 2 that he actually starts making machines specifically designed to try and fight Sonic. At least that's what I've heard. Yeah, okay. Here we go. Eggman had been younger, as his first meeting with the Ronin had taken place during his infant days of villainy. But even back then, he had been stumped as to how a mere hedgehog, no, a mere child, was able to defeat his robot swarms with little to no elf effort. After his first defeat, he spent a year attempting to figure out just how he was beaten. But no equation, no variable, no constant ever seemed to make sense. Yet somehow, against all odds, the little hedgehog brat had become a large thorn in his side. The pain caused by that thorn never seemed to ease, and with every defeat in every zone, it seemed to become more and more unbearable. Once, during his year-long break, he had stumbled upon Little Planet, the home of the Time Stones, an Amoebian history book. Time Stones could be very useful indeed. With more than just world conquest, he could erase the very fact that the hedgehog had ever existed. And with that fact erased, every defeat that the hedgehog had ever caused would be gone as well with a smirk on his face. The doctor began his exploration of the planet. Predictably, the hedgehog had just shown up to stop him, but this time he was ready. During his little break, he had also begun construction on Metal Sonic. Could be in every way better than the original. Why? As the fact that Metal was built by the Doctor himself was enough to prove his superiority. After all, technology was always superior to the natural world, even if the natural world had been what created the original. Because Metal was inorganic, he had no pesky nerve endings to cause pain, no vulnerable organs, no blood, and best of all, no will. Unlike that pesky rodent. No matter how many times the Doctor knocked him down, he always got back up again, and with an even brighter fire in his eyes. How he detested that hedgehog. Metal was simply the best, because he took all the hedgehog's best traits and obeyed the Doctor's every command. If the Doctor had ever gotten the roboticizer up and running, he would have done his utmost to put the hedgehog through it. Well, that's a neat reference to the comics. It would have brought him endless satisfaction and joy to see the rebellious Sonic forced to obey him and destroy the very land and creatures he loved so dearly. One One of his underlings had asked him why he was so obsessed with the hedgehog. Although that subordinate was instantly scrapped, it caused him to think. Why was he so obsessed with the blue nuisance? Was it perhaps jealousy? Was the doctor jealous of the hedgehog? No, he decided. He was only reluctantly impressed by his abilities. If he had the chance, he would like to dissect the robot, not the robot, the rodent, and figure out what made him tick. How were his legs able to withstand his speed? How was he able to see while moving at the speed of sound? What caused his that unusual durability? How much chaos did he have in him? In this strange world called Mobius, as far as the doctor understood, chaos was of paramount importance. Chaos energy was the deciding factor in how this world operated. The hedgehog was more chaotically inclined, then it would answer many of the doctor's questions. If only he had been able to study and experiment on the hedgehog, he would surely have been able to harness his endless energy into a much more useful purpose. By powering his factories. What a waste. Metal Sonic had been turned into scrap metal, much to the doctor's chagrin, and the relentless hedgehog took the time stones right from under his nose, and he freed the little girl. That brat somehow made it off the little planet unharmed, while the doctor had received countless bruises and burns with nothing to show for it. He had trudged back to one of his bases before letting out a scream of frustration and tragedy in the place. He overthrew tables, broken badniks, torn up blueprints, and finally sunk into his chair in defeat. Just what was so special about that damn hedgehog that he'd always won in the end? Even his perfect creation, which should have been more than a match, was obliterated by the doctor's own white-tipped laser after the spiky pest outran him in a foot race. To add insult to injury, the hedgehog, after escaping unscathed, had thrown a rock with the perfect trajectory, causing the doctor's escape vehicle to malfunction and explode. The doctor sighed and stapled his fingers, studying footage of the fleet-footed hedgehog as he destroyed the doctor's creations. He took notes, made graphs, schematics, you name it, but he was still unable to come up with an answer as to how the hedgehog defeated him. Everything would go perfectly, and then suddenly, BAM! A blue blur would tear across the screens, turning the doctor's hard work into nothing more than fancy explosions. Gritting his teeth, the doctor got to work on his next project. Time stones would be nothing more than pretty rocks compared to his next conquest, the Chaos Emeralds. Dr. Eggman, or Robotnik as he was known in those days, decided the only balm for his wounds caused by the thorn in his side would be a victory so great that it would crush the little speed demon spirit. So he turned his sights on West Side Island, and with them, the mystical and immensely powerful gems. The hedgehog had thoroughly beaten him on South Island and Little Planet, but Robotnik was going to make sure this time was different. But as he sent the metallic swarms out across the lands, news of his attack must have gotten back to the little hedgehog, who arrived from over the ocean in a red biplane. Robotnik had chuckled when the security footage had shown the best and ordered the plane be shut down. The aim of his turret had been true, and the biplane went down in a swirl of smoke and fire. But Robotnik wasn't satisfied, as he hadn't been able to see the hedgehog himself get blasted to smithereens. Although he had only just begun this rivalry, he didn't want to be made a fool of for assuming the best-case scenario when the hedgehog had already defied his expectations so many times. Thus, he boarded his eggmobile and set off to destroy the nuisance, and hopefully end this little game once and for all. Unfortunately, the hedgehog had made a friend, a small little fox with mutated tails, who was also a genius to boot, and of course, with ease. He destroyed all of his robots and all of his bigger machines he himself piloted, and also collected the blasted Chaos Emeralds that were his whole reason for coming to the sickeningly bright island. But Robotnik still had his ace in his hole, his masterpiece, his Mona Lisa, his Death Egg. He had spent most of his life planning this. There was absolutely no way that the blasted hedgehog could beat him up here in space. Even if the hedgehog managed to get on board, he had recently perfected the Death Egg robot and Silver Sonic. And it seemed impossible that the hedgehog could beat him. He was invincible. But as Dr. Eggman looked back on that moment, he realized he had been quite foolish. Of course, he had to take into account everything that had happened since that battle, but even so, believing something like the Death Egg robot would be the thing to defeat Sonic, quite foolish indeed. The birth of Super Sonic came as a shock to both the hedgehogs and the human. Robotnik had exited the Death Egg robot, lowering himself to the ground to look at his foe, who it seemed was finally defeated. The emeralds had emerged from the from the hedgehog's body without warning and started to float gently around him as he lay beaten, bleeding red on the metallic catwalk. Robotnik had watched in fascination as the hedgehogs emeralds rotated gently around the hedgehog's wounded form. But when he tried to reach for one of the gems, his hand was scalded by energy that burned hotter than any fire he had ever worked with. Hissing, he had withdrawn his hand, calmly studying the third-degree burn, before turning his eyes back to the sight before him and watching with interest as the emeralds, one by one, re-entered the body of the 12-year-old hedgehog. It was at that moment that horrible screaming started up from the child, one that nearly broke Robotnik's calm facade. He himself had never managed to get the sound from the hedgehog. No matter how hard he hit him, this screaming continued. The hedgehog's body started to writhe on the catwalk. His limbs twisted every which way, his small hands continuously closed into fists that were causing his fingers to crave bloody crescents into his palms. His legs thrashed wildly as he struggled to contain the power of the Chaos Emeralds, and his fur kept flashing between azure and bright gold. Robotnik watched near impassively, but if the hedgehog was able to open his eyes, even he would have seen a momentarily flashing concern. Whether the concern was for the hedgehog or Robotnik himself would have remained a mystery. The transformation continued, until all at once the terrible screeching stopped. It was dead silent. Not even the sounds of the child's labored breathing seemed to reach the ears of the doctor, who was studying the golden form on the ground before him with great interest. Now this was something he would have liked to dissect. Then a small hand twitched. The doctor was shaken out of his contemplation rather quickly when he noticed a sign of life, and quickly reboarded the Death Egg robot. As the golden hedgehog stood up and opened his now amber eyes, Robotnik ejected the egg mobile from the second Death Egg robot and hurriedly opened the hangar door in space. Although he hated leaving work unfinished, he knew if he stayed he probably wouldn't survive for another second. An explosion rocked the Eggmobile from behind, probably supersonic, wreaking havoc throughout his base. And Robotnik was absolutely sweating as he hurriedly steered his craft into space and back into the atmosphere. One look behind him showed that the now golden rodent was ripping his beautiful Death Egg into infinitesimal pieces. He groaned and glowered at his loss, but he knew he had to escape supersonic or risk death, which was infinitely worse than losing a piece of machinery, even one as incredible as the Death Egg. From his vantage point, now within the atmosphere, he witnessed Supersonic fall back down to Mobius, probably unconscious if his closed eyes were anything to go by. Robotnik watched with bated breath, hoping that the hedgehog would fall back into the ocean, but no such luck. His foxy friend, piloting the biplane Robotnik had shot down earlier, caught him on the wing. Robotnik growled in frustration, but turned to look back up at the sky as his Death Egg descended into the atmosphere. Following the course of its fall, his eyes landed on a floating island. Strange. He turned his Eggmobile to the site of the crash and was soon on his way, hoping that it would take the hedgehog longer to recover than usual. And so it was that Robotnik met Knuckles the Echidna, protector of the Master Emerald. Now, Robotnik probably would have been intimidated by the Echidna's impressive strength, yet the red-furred creature wasn't so gullible. All they had to do was feed him a few lies about that blasted hedgehog, and the Echidna was off, taking care of his problem for him. Truly an idiot. Robotnik quickly began his takeover of the island, sending badniks everywhere he could, hoping to further slow down his nemesis. Unfortunately, it appeared that the hedgehog had beaten every one of the Echidna's traps with ease, and Robotnik cursed his luck at that. That the very moment he finds the Master Emeralds is the same moment the hedgehog does. To further complicate matters, the Echidna had found out his ruse and was now attempting to stop him as well. Okay, so this is based off the comics, not the game. Okay. But it looks like they're more using I believe it's based off the comics. The story is based more in the comics than in the games. But the design for Eggman is more based off his more classic video game design rather than his comic book design, because I think let me double check. Okay, so from the sound of things from that this is based off the Sonic First comic. I know I'm getting off topic, but this kind of ties into the story. The Sonic First was a special comic that was actually released with the video game Sonic Mega Collection. You can actually read this entire comic book for free if you just get the game, because it's actually built into the game. And it came with 3 stories. It came with, like, I think the first edition. The first one was the first edition of Sonic comic. The second story was the introduction of this person right here, Bunny Rabbit, and the third story was actually an adaptation of Sonic the Hedgehog 3, and that's, or more specifically, just the first half of Sonic Adventure 3. Not Sonic Adventure 3, Sonic the Hedgehog 3. That's what I think is actually what's happening here. I didn't catch it at first because, it sounded more like the games. But then once it got to this paragraph, it made more sense to being based off the comic. Like, I actually read this comic in Sonic Mega Collection. It's actually really good. If it actually what got me interested into the comics. I actually like the video games, and I like the Sonic comics. I like both. And when Sonic, like, fun fact, when Sonic Forces was being announced, like, we didn't know any information. I thought, are we finally gonna get, like, at least some of the comic book characters in the Sonic game? Like, I would expect, like, I would have been shocked if someone like Sally Acorn or Bunny Rabbit or just someone who was exclusive to the comics debuted in Sonic Forces. That would have legitimately been cool. Like, oh yeah, here's what Eggman looks like. So I'm guessing that the story is based off this, but it's using the design, but it's using the video game version of design of Eggman instead of this Eggman. That's what I'm guessing. I don't know if I'm right, but it does read like it's this. It's based, like, the story is based off this. Well, let's continue. To further complicate matters, the Ken had found out about his ruse and was now attempting to stop him as well. Robotnik shook off both his pursuers. Electrocution always worked, and was attempting to get back to the Death Egg, which he had been busy rebuilding while his rodents took over the island. When he passed by a strange mural. In fact, the mural was so strange, yes, he fully stopped his Eggmobile and turned to study it. It depicted. Robotnik squinted. No, that couldn't possibly be him and the Hedgehog. Could it? It was impossible. It could not. The tribe held many mysteries. Robotnik shook his head and continued on, attempting to dismiss the clearly ancient mural, though his spirit was heartened by one thing. The mural didn't show who won in the struggle over the Master Emerald. He smirked as the Death Egg came into sight, ready to launch. Now would be his final battle with the Hedgehog, and it was sure to end in victory. Okay, so the second half of the sentence is basically him going into Mystic I think it's called Hidden Palace Zone, because that's actually a real thing in the game. Let me actually show you guys. Yeah, this is what he saw right here, which is basically foreshadowing the Supersonic fight. Yeah, just ignore Supersonic and Knuckles about to beat the living daylights out of him. Just ignore that. Okay, so now we got this. Sound of struggle from the next room drew Eggman's attention. And he looked to the monitor playing current video feed. The Hedgehog was struggling with his bonds, grunting in exertion but remained immobile. The doctor chuckled. There was no mirth to it. The same song and dance over and over again as he watched and studied all the years-old security footage playing on the monitors around him. A contemplative mood fell over him, remembering everything that had happened between him and Sonic. It left an odd trace of nostalgia in his mind. The Hedgehog was trapped in the next room over, but he wouldn't be for long. Now would be the perfect chance to end their years-long struggle. Settle things once and for all. But he couldn't bring himself to do it. Not yet, anyway, he told himself. Eggman sighed as he studied the footage from the second launch of the Death Egg. He had been so close that time. But not even the great Eggman Robo was enough to defeat Hypersonic. The transformation at time hadn't been quite so tough on Sonic, but it had resulted in the complete obliteration of the Death Egg. Over the years, Eggman had come close to victory countless times, but Sonic always saved the day at the 11th hour. Now the Hedgehog was 15. Their war had gone on for 5 years. Neither were any closer to winning. Eggman would always come back as long as there was something to conquer, and Sonic would always defeat him. The Hedgehog truly was weak. Not in the traditional sense, no, not at all, but in the ways that mattered. He was unable to witness death without feeling guilt, and he was unable to kill Eggman. Even though that would have put an end to the world's problems, his heart was much too pure for any of the ending lives businesses, which was something Eggman had always hated. Sonic could break your spirit, though, without him even realizing it, something the Eggman further loathed. I mean, he killed Eraser. Like, he killed Eraser. Like, Sonic's not happy-go-lucky. He's like, he has killed before. I think in the comics he actually has killed. It's just something he really doesn't like to do, but if given no choice, then he will do it. But it's like, well, I think the reason in the comics he doesn't kill Eggman because it's like he always knows that Eggman is gonna lose in the end. Like, he's not and Eggman, unlike a bunch of other villains, Eggman doesn't really try and kill people. I think he just tries to take over stuff without just saying, I want to rule this place. All you are my slaves. Like, okay, but I don't think I haven't read all the comics. I don't think he actually killed people. I know Eraser, I know in the end of his Secret Rings, like, his last wish was he imprison Eraser in the lamp for all eternity, and then he tosses the thing in the lamp, pretty much just killing the guy. And it was hinted in like some of the lines in Sonic and the Black Knight. If it wasn't for the fact Merlina was kind of sympathetic, like she wasn't really a bad person. It was more she was desperate to like not have everyone die around her and not have everything like become ruined. Like he probably would like it was hinted in the lines that he was going to kill her. He was more than likely willing to kill like a preteen girl. Like Merlina, I think is like pretty young in the game. I think she's like 14, 15, and and if it wasn't for the fact, again, no, it wasn't for the fact that she was actually sympathetic, like she wasn't really, really evil, they probably would have killed her, like, completely outright. But I think with Eggman, it's more like he doesn't go too far. He just, he's evil, but he's not truly despicable enough to really kind of push that line. Um, I could be wrong though. I could be horribly wrong. So let's continue. All right, here. Even though that would okay. Where was I? Without him realizing something. Okay. After all these defeats, Eggman was truly contemplating the benefits of retiring. For a while, of course. The Hedgehog truly believed he could make the Doctor give up building robots to conquer the world. Even after everything Eggman had done to try and prove otherwise. He saw the good in everyone. And he was a hero. Eggman shook his head. He would have never contemplated giving up in any way all those years ago, but now, perhaps the Hedgehog had reached him, created a small chink in his armor of a difference for the pain he created everywhere he went. Doctor was still quite a selfish man, but now, if he were to give himself a year off from tyranny, surely wouldn't complain. Anyway, Eggman supposed Sonic becoming such a hero was his fault. Without him, the Hedgehog surely wouldn't have known what to do with his gift of super speed. In that way, they complemented each other. Each gave each other a purpose, after all. If Eggman had been able to easily conquer the world back then, what would he be doing now? Sitting around, bored out of his mind. What was the point after you had won? Sonic had given him purpose and drive to keep improving with his machines and genius. Just as he gave the Hedgehog purpose and drive to keep honing his abilities and speed. Without each other, they wouldn't have a challenge, or any reason to get better. As annoying as that Hedgehog was, Hedgehog had grown a strange sort of soft spot for him. Well, he would still take any chance to humiliate Sonic, and he would do everything he could to knock that cocky smirk off his face and break his spirit. But at this point, he wasn't sure he would do if he actually killed Sonic. None of the Hedgehog's friends had the same fire or rebellion. Though he was sure Knuckles and Shadow would be able to kill him effortlessly, no one else ignited the spark of genius in the Doctor, just annoyance or fear. Only his age-old nemesis could drive him to improve his machine so much, could drive him to use all 300 of his IQ points. Eggman supposed as he glanced down at the button on the control panel, that was why he just couldn't find it in him to kill Sonic. There was simply no one else who could oppose him in the same way. A loud yell from the next room, along with the groan of snapping metal, caused him to smirk. He knew Sonic would escape quickly, but he had built an even bigger and better robot to defeat him this time. As he settled into the egg watchdog, which blocked the exit of the lair, he allowed himself a small chuckle. Even if he couldn't bring himself to kill Sonic purposely, any chance to lay a beat down on the pesky rodent was always welcome. Aw, Eggy, you shouldn't have, the Hedgehog joked. Trust me, Sonic, you're gonna wish I didn't, Eggman said before he punched the button that would activate the giant mech. Eggman wasn't sure how this battle would end, but he couldn't find it in himself to be upset either way. A vacation sounded pretty nice anyway. This story only has one review. Why does this story only have one review? The story needs more reviews, dang it. What do I think of the story? I really like it. I mean, it kind of didn't make sense at first. Like, it just started with, like, an introspection of Eggman as a character, which was good. It was wonderfully well written, but I'm like, but I was curious about where it was going. And then at the end, then we got, Sonic. Like, Sonic's already locked up. Eggman's already in his mech with the perfect chance to kill Sonic. He had him at gunpoint, metaphorically. But then instead, he's just watching the footage and realizing that in a weird sort of way, he has sort of a begrudging respect for Sonic now. Like, he knows he can kill him sometimes. But I like the result that the reason he's not doing this is because after all these defeats, he realized the futility of what would happen if he killed Sonic. Like, what next? Like, when it comes to these types of, like, these villains who say, I'm going to take over the world, and someone always asks, what's next? And then, when they say something bigger, and then they always say, what's next? Then they're going to run out of stuff, and then they have everything. What's left? So I like the idea that Eggman, from battling Sonic after all these time, realizes that there is no what's next. And he realizes, well, I can take over the world, but I want Sonic to try and stop me, because without Sonic, it's not worth anything. It's not worth to take over the world. It's not worth to really kill anyone. Again, Eggman, at his words, he just causes destruction. He doesn't really kill people, unlike Eraser, who was basically a murderer, and Merlina, who was more sympathetic, and other villains that appeared throughout the game, like Black Doom. He was going to destroy the world, and Shadow just flat out killed him. But Eggman, realizing his own futility, his own humanity, the fact that he found someone to push him, and he doesn't want to give that up. I really like that idea, especially with the idea. You don't really see the idea implemented with the character thinking of it already about to kill someone. Like, it's usually with talking, but this whole nonverbal implementation of the idea, especially someone who already kind of knows, and realizing that he just can't go through with it. He just doesn't want to. And that just elevates the story, far and beyond. It honestly feels like the author tried too hard. But it's a good sort of try too hard. You wanted the author, and not the author, the reader, to kind of get into the mindset of Eggman, and why he's watching them, literally at the end, he's already watching Sonic. He has the button. He had his finger on the button, ready to kill him, and then Sonic gets out, and he's like, and he presses a different button, turns on the robot ready to just fight him. So I really like the idea. If I had to rate this on a scale of 1 to 5, far and away. I didn't see any grammar errors. The pacing was on point. The character presentation was phenomenal. The plot, the whole idea behind the story was amazing. There is no fault with the story. I wouldn't change anything. I wouldn't add anything. I wouldn't take away anything. I wouldn't do anything. This story is perfect as is. This story is phenomenal. Congratulations, Death Rainbow. This is amazing. This is just stand out. You earn my respect for this story. Like, I understand where Armister came from when she said she really liked this story. This was an amazing story. And it's even such a shame that this story had wait, what? Ironically, IDW Sonic series has a similar response. Oh, really? I didn't know that. What was the story? It was I like the story. It's kind of dampened by the fact that IDW kind of did something similar, but it probably did it differently. Like, you gotta take it, like, you're gonna have similar ideas somewhere. But this story is really good. I really love the story. 5 out of 5. Just, this story needs more reviews. I'm actually tempted to put in a review now, but I guess you might as well count this at the end. So, this has been Dark Symphony 777 with Can't Bring Myself to Pull the Trigger, and cut.